Thought we'd go into some real mystical stuff. It always is interesting when we study the book of Revelation. And the reason that the book of Revelation is so interesting is when you understand it spiritually, mystically, you realize that the book of Revelation is not talking about struggles and Armageddons outside. It's talking about struggles and Armageddons inside. And all of the different symbols in the book of Revelation are psychological and actually stand for aspects of the workings of your mind, the workings of your own brain. Now, people have, studied the book of Revelation for years, and it's really never revealed anything to anybody, but that's basically because they've been looking for all of this to happen on the outside, which would make God a monster. I mean, half of the world burning up in bombs and things turning to blood and all of this. These are all symbols of thought, symbols of the things that rage inside of our own minds. And how do we deal with these things? So let's open the book of Revelation, and we won't get too far, but we'll just talk about it. And nobody's around. I mean, what the heck? You're alone, basically. Nobody's going to know you were watching this program because, a lot of the fundamentalists get all upset, when their people watch this, which is scary to me because you should be free to read everything. You should be free to listen to everything. Whenever somebody says, don't listen to that, there's a reason. The reason is that you're liable to hear something that may draw you away from them. That's what they're afraid of. Not that you'll get hurt, because, if you're mature enough, who's going to hurt you? The point is, in order to control you, church, religious organizations have to warn you under fear. Don't go near those other people. Don't listen to them. Don't read any of their stuff. It's like Hitler in the book burnings, It's not that anything is wrong in what you're going to read or anything is wrong in what you're going to hear, but you may find something beautiful that will draw you away from the ones who are trying to control you. So just pull the shades down and lock the doors, and, they'll never know. We're at Revelation chapter 2, verse 17. And it says, to him that overcomes. When the Bible speaks that way, it says, to him that overcomes, it means overcoming the mind, overcoming the thoughts of the lower mind, the thoughts of the carnal mind. Just think, even today, maybe even right now, there's something inside of your head, inside of your brain, that never stops the conversation. It's constantly talking to you. And you know what? You're constantly answering it back. What is it? It's something that talks to you, and you talk back, and it tells you lots of times you're no good, and it tells you you're sick, and it tells you you're this, and it tells you you're that. And it's part of what is called the carnal mind. It's the lower carnal nature. And here in the book of Revelation, it says, to him or her that overcomes, rises above that lower mind to the higher mind, which is the right hemisphere of the brain. It says, I will give to eat of the hidden manna. Now, the hidden manna is spiritual bread from heaven. The literalists who study the Bible believe that as the children of Israel were going across the desert, bread fell out of heaven. It didn't. It's an allegory. That means it's a spiritual story. It doesn't mean it really happened. You'll never even find one record that there was any such thing as 40,000 people leaving Egypt and all of that plagues. It never happened. Nobody kept records better than the Egyptians, and that never happened. But it's a mystical story because in reality, the carnal mind inside of your head is Egypt. Meditation is the desert, and the right hemisphere of the brain is the Holy Land. That's what this is an allegory about. And if you don't believe that the Old Testament is an allegory, and you look up that word, it's a symbolic story. Look up the word allegory, A-L-L-E-G-O-R-Y in your dictionary. And then look up Galatians chapter 4, verse 24, and Paul talking about Abraham and Sarah, which also a lot of people take literally. The Apostle Paul says, which things are an allegory. In other words, it's a symbolic story, a myth, if you would. So the hidden manna, or the manna from heaven, is not bread that falls out of the sky. It is understanding that comes from the higher mind. So what's being said, that to him that overcomes, if you will get into meditation and do what Jesus says, practice the single eye, take no thought, raise yourself above the thoughts of the mind, then you're overcoming, and then you will be able to eat the hidden manna. You will be able to eat the wisdom that is hidden from others. That's why fundamentalists, people who are literal, will never understand these things. Jesus Christ said, unto you is given to know the secrets of the kingdom, but to them that are without, all things are done in parables. In other words, those who do not enter within themselves and go into the higher mind in meditation will never understand these things. And so they read these things, and they're reading symbolic stories, and they're taking them literally. I mean, you know, doesn't it sometimes drive you nuts when you go in and you hear people talking about, you know, there was really a guy that took all these animals on a boat? I mean, 2 of every kind of animal in the world got on his boat, or there was this girl that cut this guy's hair and he lost all of his power, or a fish swaddled this other guy. I mean, all of these bizarre things, they are so bizarre. You know they have to be allegory. You know they have to be myths, and yet very brilliant intellectual people are teaching other people as if they literally happened, and they didn't. They didn't. Things like that don't happen. Never did happen. They're meant to show you that they are symbols of what must happen in here. You must overcome the thoughts of the mind by rising up to the higher mind in meditation, by shutting down those thoughts, as Jesus said, take no thought. Then you will be given the hidden manna, or the wisdom which is hidden in the right hemisphere of the brain. The wisdom of the ages is hidden in the right hemisphere of the brain. That's why Jesus said in John 21:6, cast your net to the right side. You know, something interesting. He said, cast your net to the right side and you will find. Now, people say, oh, he was talking about fishing. No, he wasn't. He was saying, cast your net to the right side and you will find it. And you know, there's a way that you can prove he wasn't talking about fishing. The number 9 in mysticism means consciousness, the human mind, consciousness. You know, 666, the sign of the beast, you add 6 plus 6 plus 6 equals 18. 1 plus 8 equals 9. That means the beast is consciousness, your lower consciousness. And in the next verse in that Revelation, it says that 144,000 are saved. You add 1 plus 4 plus 4, 9. So that you know that the higher consciousness is salvation, the lower consciousness is the beast. Now, when Jesus says, cast your net to the right side in John 21:6, in John 21:11 it says they collected the fish. Guess how many fish they caught? They counted them, 153. Add them up. 1 plus 5 plus 3 equals 9. So the Bible is telling you in this cosmic code, hey, I'm saying cast your energy to the right hemisphere of the brain and you'll find wisdom. That's the hidden manna. Do you know what? In the pyramids in Egypt, you have 2 chambers which are set up like the human brain. One is the female chamber of the queen, the other is the male chamber of the king. It's called the Atma Buddha, the Buddha being the female spirit, the Atma being the male. But in the males, in the king's chamber, there is hidden in a box what is called manas, M-A-N-N-A-S. So that's the hidden manna. That's the wisdom of the mind. So here, it says in Revelation 2:17, to him that overcomes the thoughts of the lower mind, I will give to eat of the hidden manna. People who come into meditation, lift themselves above the thoughts of the lower mind, will receive understanding from the higher mind, wisdom, direction, enlightenment for their lives, for the lives of their families, for the lives of the universe. That's what this New Age is all about. See? When we talk about manna, or we talk about bread, in John 6:51, Jesus Christ would say, I am the living bread. Now, our fundamental friends will say, well, Jesus is saying that he's the bread of life. But it's not what he said. He said, I am is the living bread. The word I am is the name of God. You remember in Exodus, what is it, Exodus 3, when Moses was on the mountain and he asked God, what is your name? God says, I am. And that means that as you take to yourself and understand the I, the am, the existence of that which is God within you, then where Jesus was saying, I am the living bread which came down from heaven. Not that he was, because how do I know? How do I know that Jesus wasn't talking of himself? How do I know that Jesus was not speaking of himself when he said, I am the living bread? Because Jesus Christ said, of my own self I can do nothing, John 5:30. Jesus Christ said on John 5:30, of my own self I can do nothing. So how could he be the living bread? And then Jesus Christ said in John 5:31, if I give a witness of myself, my witness is false. So then how could he be the living bread? He was saying, I am. He wasn't saying, I am the living bread. He's saying, I am. He's identifying that which is the higher mind, the living bread which came down from heaven, and if any man eats this food, he shall live forever. That is the strongest reason why you should begin to get in and do this meditation, practicing the single eye, because the single eye takes you to that point of the higher realms of the mind, above the carnal mind, okay, where there are no human thoughts, where is the living bread, where if you eat that bread, you live forever. That's what's so very, very important. And it's important to see how in John 6:51 Jesus Christ identifies. Most people in reading the Bible read that wrong because they say, Jesus says, I am the living bread. And so they're saying he's talking about himself. No, he wasn't. All you have to do is come back to John 5:30 and you'll see Jesus Christ says, of my own self I can do nothing. And John 5:31, if I testify of myself, my testimony is not true. And then Jesus, of course, said, hey, the things I do, you can do better than me. So Jesus Christ did not come to show how great he was. He came to show how great you are. It's religion, fundamental religion, which has tried to paint you as a worthless sinner and has put people on the guilt trips and the remorse and the fear and all of this stuff that comes out of trying to control the minds of people. That is the wisdom of divine meditation. Rising above the thoughts of the lower mind, overcoming, and then eating that bread or taking the wisdom, because what happens is you start to energize the brain cells at the right hemisphere of the brain. Don't you see? Look, when the sun in the sky on December the 21st goes through the constellation Crux, the Southern Cross, it's crucified. December the 21st, it's the shortest day of the year. December the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, the sun sits for 3 days and 3 nights in the bowels of the earth. It's called the winter solstice. On December the 25th, by the trajectory of the earth, the sun is born. Yes, it's Christmas Day, but it has nothing to do with that. That's why you celebrate the birth of Christ on Christmas Day. Because the ancient quote-unquote pagans said, hey, the sun is born on December the 25th. It's always been that way since the beginning of time. It has to be, because by the trajectory of the earth, at the end of the winter solstice, the sun begins to rise. December the 25th is when that happens. Okay? When it comes up to the spring equinox, the sun enters into the constellation Aries. And then in the northern hemisphere, it sits at the right hand, or it sits at the eastern sky. It moves to the right side, and summer comes. So the sun has to be crucified, take no thought, sit in the tombs of the earth in meditation, then raise itself up into the higher realms, where it then sits at the right hand of power, and summer comes, spring comes. So that's the way. The same law that operates in the cosmos outside operates on this cosmos inside. So when you practice this, you're doing the same thing. You're lifting the energy from the solar plexus, which is the place of the sun in your abdomen, to the pineal gland of the brain, where it then opens up the right hemisphere of the brain, and then summer comes to your life. Everything that was dead bursts forth into life. All new things. You begin to understand things. You begin to understand what God is, what you are, what the universe is all about. And the things that I'm talking to you about today, it's a beautiful thing. It's no fear, it's no guilt, there's no hells or demons or devils or any of that junk that people have made up to control other people. They don't exist. They never did exist. The only devils that exist are the thoughts that are in our mind, and that's enough devil, isn't it? But there then you understand that from divine meditation. You activate the right hemisphere of the brain in the same way that the sun sits in the spring at the right side or at the eastern sky and brings spring and new life to the earth. Here, when the energy sits at the right hemisphere of the brain, it brings light and new life to you and to your family. 90% of your brain is dormant. You only use 10%, which is the left side. And when you activate this in meditation, you start awakening brain cells at the right side. That's why Jesus said, cast your net to the right side. That's why in the book of Kings, 1 Kings chapter 6, verse, I think it was 8, it says, when they built the temple, they put the door to the holy place at the right side of the building, because they're talking about the right hemisphere of the brain. So that's overcoming. That's the wisdom. You get a lot of born again people and all this kind of stuff, and the fundamentalists say, well, you have to be careful. You'll open your head to all kinds of demons. Because first of all, they were taught by religion that there's demons in their heads. That's asinine. You can't open yourself. You know what that does? That type of teaching makes you afraid of yourself. And when you're afraid of yourself, how can you ever understand God, who is you? You're afraid of God. You're afraid of that which is within you because of religion and tradition. And then Jesus said, you know, if you go and you pray, say, you know, you want to enter into the higher mind above the realm of thought and open the right hemisphere of the brain, you say, well, I'm afraid that I can run and, you know, open my mind to something. Jesus Christ said in Matthew 7:9, if you ask your Father for bread, He's not going to give you a stone. If you ask for fish, He's not going to send you a serpent. That's trusting. But religion is, Christians themselves, they don't trust Jesus Christ. They don't trust Jesus Christ for what He said because they don't know what He said, because nobody ever stopped to look at what He said. They don't know that Jesus Christ said, don't pray to me. He did. In John 16:23, they don't know that Jesus Christ said He wasn't going to pray for you, but He did. He said, you should go yourself to the Father. They don't know that Jesus Christ said, hey, I'm no good. He did. They don't know that Jesus Christ said that you could do better than Him. He did. Go into your church and say, hey, you know, I can do better than Jesus. They'll throw you out. But that's what Jesus came here to show you, that you can. And that's why the world is filled with the hate and the violence and the shooting and the killing and the starvation and the drugs, because people have been filled with guilt and despair instead of being filled with Jesus tried to show them, hey, you're the light of the world. He didn't say, hey, look at how great I am. He said, look at how great you are if you'll only believe it. Did I tell you that, did I tell you about the, I don't even remember if I took a break to tell you about the, I'll tell you at the end, about the video network. When Jesus Christ, according to the Bible, in the last supper of the Passover, in Luke 22:16, it says, I will not any more eat of this until it is fulfilled in the kingdom of God. What was He talking about? What do you think? I'm on a planet somewhere? There's no planets up there with anybody living on them. And why would God put everybody on this tennis ball in the middle of the universe and then run off to some place? That's totally contrary to what Jesus said, because Jesus Christ said not only is He in you, but in John 14:23 He says He and the Father are in you. Everything that is of God is inside of you, and you're looking outside instead of looking inside to find the truth. And Jesus says, I won't eat this Passover anymore until it's fulfilled in the kingdom. That's where the manna is. Where is the kingdom? Luke 17:21. Jesus Christ said the kingdom of God is within you. So the spiritual food, that hidden manna, is wisdom and understanding that you will receive when you turn away from looking to the outside and turn to looking in the inside. You have people saying, well, the hidden manna fell out of the sky. The Apostle Paul said, you should not be a minister of the letter. You shouldn't take this stuff literally. And he tried to get us to understand these are spiritual things. This stuff was written by people from the East. I mean, they write in allegory, they write in symbols, they write in parables, and here we're sitting taking this literally. Would you take it literally if I said to you, let's go shoot the bull? Are you going to get a gun down off the rack and we're going to go out and shoot a bull? See, what a lot of you people, let me tell you something. A lot of you people, you have these new Bibles, they're trash. Absolute trash. You know why they're trash? They've tried to make this mystical, spiritual language easy to understand literally. And this is what you do. If I say to you, let's go shoot the bull, well, you know I'm only saying let's have a conversation. But somebody comes along and is going to make that verse easy to understand. So they'll say, they went and got rifles, guns, and bullets, and then they went looking for a large black animal with horns, and they killed it. Now, what you've done, you've taken the verse, let's go shoot the bull, you've made it very clear literally, you need a gun, you need bullets, and then you go find a big black animal with horns and you kill it. But what you've done is you've missed the meaning. It doesn't mean that. It means have a conversation. The only Bible that has not changed the mystical language from the ancient times is the King James Bible. Just because they didn't. They just left it alone. But you have all of these newer Bibles, and they've done exactly that. Where if you say, let's go shoot the bull, they'll say, let's get a gun and get a big black animal. Because they've taken all the mysticism out of it. When you try to make this stuff easy to understand, you're explaining literally those things which are meant to be taken allegorically. And if you're reading those newer translations, you're way off in the moon somewhere. You know, one of the things that we look at when we come together in these types of things is not to try to put anybody down. Really not. But I mean, my God, you know, you've got your kid, you're raising kids, or you got people, friends. I mean, this world has been a violent, warring place between drugs and people starving. You ever see those little kids in Africa starving to death? I mean, you'll have these church guys on television, these evangelists, and somebody will say, oh, I can move my arm. Oh, hallelujah. And they'll all dance around and people will fall on the floor. Hallelujah. He can move his arm. But 30,000 kids or 20,000 little black kids starved to death today in Somalia. Who cares if he can move his arm? I mean, if that is a God with such a warped sense of ideals that he intervened and would heal this guy's arm while 30,000 kids, children, and their mothers and fathers starved to death and he did nothing, I wouldn't want to be around a God like that. I wouldn't want any part of him. But this is what we're told. This is what we see in these show business demonstrations on television of this evangelist type of stuff, where all of the emotions in the world, and there are people that literally get healed. There's no doubt about it. But how does it happen? It happens because a person takes into themselves the suggestion of this healing, and it soars into the subconscious, and the subconscious acts on it. It is what people have called it for centuries, mind over matter. And we'll talk about that maybe in a few weeks, that the human mind and the subconscious, that once you tell the subconscious, you know what that is? Did you ever see a hypnotist on television? A hypnotist will say to somebody, you cannot move your right leg. And they can't. Or when you wake up, I'll clip my fingers, and when you wake up, everything I say or anything you hear will be funny. And people will be laughing all over the place because the subconscious has taken the suggestion as truth. And many times when people go into these healing situations, it's exactly what's happened. They've opened themselves in a state of hypnotism, and the subconscious has taken it as truth, and it's acted on it. There's nothing wrong with that. That's great. I wish there was more of that. But in order, you know, to try to make it believe like that there was some God hovering down who was going to heal this guy of his sore foot and then allow all these children to starve to death, or allow hurricanes to go and wipe out people's homes and then kill people and so forth and so on. It's bizarre. It's ridiculous. And it is superstition at its worst.